So the first thing you're going to do is take these 6 problems, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're going to put them in your notebook. And I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to pause it, which means I want you to pause it. So I wrote my 6 problems like this in the notebook. And what we're going to do now is simplify each one. So let me start with number 1. And here's what I'm going to do. When you see an X, I'm not going to write X. I'm going to write 2. So I'm going to go 2, put it in parentheses, squared, minus 2 minus 1. Now, 2 squared means 2 times 2, which is 4. And now you go left to right. 4 minus 2 is 2, minus 1 is 1. And put a circle around your answer. Maybe put a box so you know that. Okay? Let's try the next one. Same thing. 2, put in 2, but this time there's only one y. So I'm going to go 2 cubed. Notice how I'm always putting it in parentheses. Makes it easier to find it. 2 cubed. This time it doesn't mean you have 2 2's. It means you have 3. 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. And 8 minus 7 is 1. Interesting. Okay. Let's go to number 3. This time, instead of having an x and a y, I have a z, and I have a negative. Whenever I have a negative, I have to be super careful. So I'm going to go negative 3, parentheses, negative 2 minus 5. Since these two are touching means multiply. 3 times 2, don't look at the 5, is 6, and a negative make a positive. And then 6 minus 5 is 1. Interesting. I wonder if they're all going to be 1. Guess we'll find out. Go to the next one. Plug in negative 3. We want to be careful about this one because it's 10 minus, then negative 3 squared. So I have to take care of this first. Negative 3 squared means negative 3 times negative 3. A negative times a negative is a positive, but then there's the minus 10, and 10 minus 9 is 1. Let's go to the next one. Plug in negative 1. We got a lot of negatives here, so we really have to stay organized and focused. Negative 1 squared minus, because that's that one, negative 1. Negative 1 squared means negative 1 times negative 1, which is positive 1. And a negative make a positive. And 1 plus 1 is 2. Interesting. Only one that's not 1 so far. Let's go to the last one. Plug in 2. 2 cubed minus 3 times 2. And remember, anytime during the video, if you're feeling like it's going too fast, just pause it, which is 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. And then you're going to take care of this step now. Don't go minus 3, multiply first. Multiplying wins out. So 3 times 2 is 6, bring down the minus. And 8 minus 6 is 2. Okay, pause it. So now that we did basic evaluating, we're going to go a little bit more fancy, and let's read this situation. So at the function factory, a number is put into the top of a function machine, and the machine puts out another number depending on how it is programmed. You're going to see an illustration. Here it is on the right. They put in the 3, and the machine outputted 8. And it says the machine is programmed to square the number and subtract 1. Okay. A diagram of the machine is at the right. And so here it is right here. It's kind of hard to see, so let me lower this. Okay. So if you look here, this is the machine, but in a mathematical way, the machine is putting in a 3 and outputting a 1, an 8. Okay. So what I want us to do actually right now is talk in your groups and figure out how did they go from the 3 to the 8. Okay. Now let's go to the next situation. So now we've got a customer brings a box with a mix of integers, -3 all the way to 3, as inputs to a function machine. She wants you to program a function machine so the output is always negative. Your manager suggests -x minus 2. So the idea is that it's always negative. I want you to take 5 minutes, talk in your groups, and see if it always will be negative, or if maybe sometimes it'll be positive. So here's what I'm hoping happened based on some of your discussions. I see all of these list of numbers, and first I want to establish, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does ... And hopefully you saw that meant it could go 4, 5, 6, 7, go up and up and up all the way to infinity. So any positive number. This could go this way, -4, -5, ... to negative infinity, okay? So they're saying don't just use these numbers, use all of the numbers. So I don't know about you, but I would rather pick a number that seems easier for me. And a number that seems easier for me when I see a 2 on the bottom is to have a 2 on top. So I'm going to plug in that x, and I'm going to go -2 over 2 minus 10. So I'm going to try that number first. Negative, or 2 divided by 2 is 1, negative. -1 minus 10, so I have 1 negative, 10. So I have a whole bunch of negatives, and that's -11. Okay, so it's still negative. Good. So I don't want to try 3, because if I try 3, it's going to give me a fraction. I'm going to pause real quick. So if I tried plugging in 3 over 2 would be a fraction, and that just is super confusing to me. So this time I think I'm going to plug in -2 to my x, because the 2 and the 2 would still cancel. So I have to be careful of that. I'm going to go negative of -2 over 2 minus 10. A negative and a negative make a positive. 1 minus 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, boom, boom, -9. Oh, it's still negative. So does that mean it's always negative? Well, hopefully what you did is thought of really big numbers. So I'm actually going to try the number 40 this time. So if I try the number 40 and I put 40 in for my x, actually I'm going to make it a -40. I'm going to try -40. So I'm going to go negative of -40 over 2 minus 10. A negative over negative is a positive. 40 divided by 4 divided by 2 is 2 with a 0, and 20 minus 10 is 10. So in this case, it is positive, which means it isn't always negative. It's sometimes negative. For I feel like a lot of these it'll be negative, but it's not an always. So if you look right here, oops, it's hard to see. Sorry about that. It says x is less than -20 will only work. Okay, so now that we have an idea that sometimes things work and sometimes things don't work, what I want you to do is in your groups, plug in -1 into your machine and then get a number. And take that number, plug it into this machine and get a number. So input, output, input, output. Do that right now, please. So I made my own version of the machine because I can't click back and forth over. So I'm going to take the -1 and I'm going to plug it in. So over here, I'm going to go 3 times -1 plus 1. When it's touching, it means multiply. 1 negative. Negative, 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 positive, boom, boom, -2. So now this right here is -2. So that means that got -2. But now I'm going to take this -2 and input it into this machine. So now I'm going to always put it in parentheses. -2 squared means -2 times -2, which is 4. So my final answer when I input -1 to this machine, I get -2. Then I take this -2 and I input it to this machine and I output 4. So now they're looking at letter B. A customer has ordered a negative number. What number could you input into the top so that a negative number comes out? So what you want to do is you want to try a whole bunch of negative numbers and you want to see what happens and see if you can ever get a negative when you're done. So talk in your groups, figure it out. And what I want you to see, if this thing could move there, is that hopefully some of you figured out that whenever you have a negative and you square it, a negative times a negative is always a positive. So no matter what you do, it is not possible. Okay. So now what we're going to do is try 1.4. So read that one to yourself and let me get that, that 3 machines. And what you need to do is suppose that 0 is the input of the first machine, but you don't know who's the first machine. And -31 is the output of the last machine. So you need to figure out, should this go first? And you put in 0, then this one goes second, and then this one goes third, and you end up with negative 31? Or is that even the right order? Take a couple minutes in your group. Actually, let's take 10 minutes and see if you can figure it out. Go. So I'm assuming what you did is in your groups, you tried to, answer B and C. So now I'm going to show you how I would interpret this. So for me, because I'm a linear person, I see it as starting with 0 because that's what they're asking me for as the input. And I'm going to see what happens when I input 0. And I just decided to pick this one first because it was listed first. So 4 times 0 minus 32. Make that a little bit bigger there for you. Okay, it's not adjusting. Anything times 0 is 0. And 0 minus 32 is negative 32. Now I'm going to take that negative 32 and I'm going to input it into my new x. So now I have negative 32 minus 2 squared is negative 34 squared. And I'll use my little calculator, 34 times 34, 1156. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So now I'm going to take this 1156 and I'm going to input it into there. 1 over 1156 is pretty much done. So when I input 0, I output 1156. Okay, that didn't answer the question. So now I'm going to put this one first because I feel like it. I'll put this one second because I feel like it. And I'll keep that one last because why not? So I'm going to play the same game. Input 0. 0 minus 2, negative 2 squared, 4. I'm going to take that 4 and put it in for my x. 16. 16 minus 32 is negative 16. And put it in there. And I get 1 over negative 16, which is my answer. It doesn't work out. Now I'm going to try doing the 1 over x first, then the x minus 2, and then the 4x minus 32. I don't have a method to this. I'm just making sure I cover it, and I'm listing it so I can see it. I'm going to plug in 0. So if I go 1 over 0, 1 over 0, I can't do it. It tells me error. So this is the scenario where you can't have a solution if you start with this one. So what that means is that if I start with this one, I can't input something that's not possible. If I have 0 pieces of pizza, I can't eat 1 piece of pizza. It's not possible. So that answers letter C. So now I'm going to try a different order. So now I'll go, let's go x minus 2 squared, and then I'll do 1 over x, and then I'll finish with 4x minus 32. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to input 0 in there. And we did that one above. So we know that there's a 4 right there. Now I'm going to take this 4, input it right there, and I get 1 over 4. Now I'm going to take that 1 over 4, and I'm going to input it into the x. Remember, when you have a number on top and number on bottom, it's bye-bye. Now I have 1 minus 32 is negative 31. So as long as I go in this order, if I input 0, my output could be negative 31. So I've answered B and C. So we answered B. We answered C. Which one can't possibly be first? 1 over x. And that kind of addressed letter D right there. And then what order will result in a final output of 36 when the initial input is 1/7? Talk in your groups, figure it out. So for the last question, the answer is you input 1/7. Your output has got to be 36. So I start with 1 over x. 1 over 1/7 is 7. And you put 7 in for x. 4 times 7 is 28. Minus 32 is negative 6. And you get the answer. And there's your 36. Okay? We're going to skip absolute value. And your teacher will have the homework written on the board for you.